Have you noticed how sometimes a comeback isn't really a comeback at all? When one of Hollywood's most iconic faces steps back into the spotlight, it can feel like everything resets. But what if we are missing the bigger picture? That's exactly what's happening with Johnny Depp. The headlines say he's returning. They call it a comeback. But when you dig a little deeper, the narrative gets far more interesting and far less straightforward. Let's walk through how his career brought him here, where the trouble really began, why his return is raising more questions than cheers, and what this means for Hollywood. Because his comeback isn't what you think. He was once untouchable. Johnny Depp didn't just build a career, he built a brand. From early roles to breakout performances like in Edward Scissorhands, he became the poster boy for offbeat charisma, edgy charm, and big box office draw. He owned the oddball, the outsider, the guy who turns the world a little sideways. But by the late 2010s, you could see the cracks. The roles were still there, but the trust was slipping. Then came the storm. What changed everything wasn't just one film or one rumor. It was legal, cultural, and public. Depp's relationship with Amber Heard and the ensuing lawsuits landed him at the center of a media firestorm. Their defamation trial in 2022 became a spectacle with winners, losers, and no clean moral edges. The verdict awarded Depp significant damages, yes, but the reputational damage had already come. Wikipedia plus 2 Screen Rant plus 2 Studios hesitated, roles dried up, and suddenly Johnny Depp wasn't just a star, he was a case study in what happens when fame and controversy collide. Which brings us to today. The announcement that Depp will star in a major studio film, reportedly Ebenezer, A Christmas Carol for a November 2026 release, triggered a wave of responses. Some celebrate the comeback he deserves. Others condemn, how can we embrace this so soon? Geo News +1. But here's the thing, Johnny himself says he never left. When asked about his comeback, he said, "My comeback? Honestly, I didn't go anywhere." The news, so what's really going on? Why is Hollywood positioning him now, and what's different this time? First, let's talk about timing. 5-6 years ago, the idea of a Depp comeback would have been less plausible. Studios were too cautious. Audiences were too divided. But the landscape has shifted. Audiences have short memories, genres like horror are booming independent of the star system, and the global streaming engine really wants any recognizable name it can get. Depp's casting in a dark, horror-tinged version of a classic story also plays into a niche that's more forgiving of risk. One writer pointed out that the very choice of character, Scrooge, mirrors his real-life arc of downfall and revival. Medium, so this isn't just Johnny Returns. It's a calculated, genre-driven test of how much the market and public are willing to separate art, persona, and controversy. Second, consider that his recent projects have been low risk but high visibility. Films like Jean Du Barry premiered at Cannes, received standing ovations, but had limited studio exposure. Wikipedia, they proved he can still act, he still draws interest, but they didn't fully restore him to the blockbuster league. So when the big studio comeback starts rolling, it's not starting from zero. It's building on those smaller wins, and on a loyal fan base that never forgot him. The industry still sees his name value. They just have to figure out if the baggage is manageable. Third, the backlash is as revealing as the comeback itself. The story isn't simply, he's back. It's, is he back? Should he be back? At what cost? Online reaction to the comeback announcement was split. Some viewers declared it disgusting, that he still has a career after everything. Others defended him zealously. Geo News +1. This isn't just about Johnny, it's about accountability, about culture, about how we treat public figures who have been through major controversies. Hollywood is trying to reboot him. The public is deciding whether to plug in. Fourth, there's a quiet irony in how Johnny frames it. He says he never left, that he lives nearby. That comeback implies a departure that didn't happen. But think about what he means. He was still working, still doing projects, just not front and center in the mainstream studio system. So this comeback is less of a revival and more of a repositioning. He used the interim to re-engineer his career under different terms, smaller films, indie choices, maybe fewer demands. When you do that, coming back to the big league means playing by a new set of rules. He's not just stepping back in, he risks stepping forward under scrutiny. Fifth, and perhaps most critical, this comeback is a test case for him, for Hollywood, for artists caught in the debate of talent versus controversy. If Johnny succeeds in this studio bid, it sets precedent for other stars with tainted legacies. If he fails, it might reinforce the notion that some falls are irreversible. The stakes are bigger than one film. One analysis even talked about this as Hollywood's test of whether mainstream audiences are ready to forgive. Medium plus one, so the outcome will ripple beyond Depp's bank account. It will shape how studios gamble on comeback narratives. Now let's pause and look closer at what Hollywood is asking of the audience. They're saying, remember the Johnny you loved. Look past the headlines. Watch the movie. But the audience is asking back, should we? Will we? What changed? The promise of the same Johnny you miss meets the reality of the controversies you can't ignore. The movie might be about ghosts or redemption, but the marketing will always be about this real-life resurrection. Because fans don't watch just characters, they watch people. At the same time, there's an artistic interest. Depp has always been at his best when playing misfits, outsiders, damaged souls. His persona fits certain kinds of stories better than others. Casting him now as Scrooge or engaging him in offbeat projects is smart. The character and the actor echo each other. Audiences sometimes forgive if the art fits the narrative of return. But the danger is, if the film fails or the backlash outweighs the ticket sales, then the comeback becomes a cautionary tale instead. Let's also factor in international markets. His appeal outside the US remains strong. Global box office numbers often allow stars like Depp to perform even when domestic sentiment is mixed. Streaming and international profits might make the studio gamble less scary. In that sense, his return may be driven less by mainstream Hollywood than by worldwide cinema economics. Which means even if you personally feel uneasy, the business model behind the comeback might still make sense. Here's another wrinkle. The comeback narrative itself can act as a distraction. While headlines focus on Johnny returning, the industry quietly moves on. New stars emerge, new controversies take over, audiences shift faster than we realize. So the big question is, when Johnny's comeback either flops or succeeds, will people still care about Johnny? Or will this all just fade into one more Hollywood cycle of hype, fall, and rebirth? Because if he succeeds and the world forgets the trouble, the cycle continues. If he fails, it could mark the end of one era and the start of a new formula for returning stars. We also can't ignore the human side. Behind the celeb persona is a person who lived through public trial, personal loss, media frenzy. Some view his comeback as a triumphant redemption. Others view it as the system rehabilitating someone who shouldn't be. And somewhere in between is the actor who just wants to act again. When you look at his own words, if I had the chance to split, I would never come back. You sense someone who's changed, or at least someone who has accepted something along the way. The news, it adds emotional color to the business story. So what does all this mean for you as a viewer? For Hollywood watchers? For anyone curious about fame, forgiveness, and spectacle? It means you're not just watching a film. You're watching a case study. You're watching how the industry negotiates risk. You're watching how the world negotiates memory and meaning. And you're watching how one man's career becomes a mirror for larger questions. Can talent outshine controversy? Can audiences move on? Can studios gamble on reputations as easily as they do on scripts? In the end, Johnny Depp's comeback might be the least interesting part of the story. What's more compelling is how it forces the industry and the audience to wrestle with something bigger. It's not just about his return. It's about the rules of return. It's about when we allow someone to re-emerge, and under what conditions. It's about whether we are okay with remembering the fall only so long as we enjoy the rise again. If you walk away remembering one thing, this isn't just Johnny's back. This is Hollywood asking, are you ready to welcome him again? And the answer won't be in the trailers or the premieres. It'll be in the ticket sales, the streaming numbers, the social media reaction. Because at the end of the day, the comeback is not what you think. It's a test. Thanks for staying with me. If this story intrigues you, drop a comment. What do you think? Should Johnny have this comeback? Are we ready to separate art from controversy? And if you're new here, subscribe for more deep dives behind the Hollywood headlines. Until next time.